Well, hello everyone. Phil here from the Blue Envelope channel. So this is part 3 of the series on Kingdom Farm. Check out the first two if you haven't seen them yet. But you might recall that at the end of part 2, it ended with the death of Joseph Rutherford, the second president of the Watchtower Society, and the recent construction of the vacant emergency backup headquarters building that they had built at Kingdom Farm. Well, after Rutherford died in the beginning of 1942, it was time for a fresh administration to take the helm of Jehovah's Witnesses, and it was headed by Nathan Knorr, who became the Society's third president. Now, interestingly, Knorr disagreed with the official Watchtower theology at that time. You might recall from part 2 that under Rutherford, the Society was teaching that Armageddon was just months away. But taking the helm of an organization a few months before it goes out of business, I guess might be a bit like being appointed captain of the Titanic a few minutes before it sinks. I mean, it's still an honor, but it doesn't really leave a lot of room to accomplish much of anything. And so Knorr's personal theology, which, as in the case of Rutherford, again became the official theology of the Jehovah's Witness religion, was that the end of World War II would not lead into the start of Armageddon. Rather, peace would follow, giving an opportunity to greatly expand the global proselytizing activity of Jehovah's Witnesses. Knorr presented this new doctrine to Jehovah's Witnesses at the first convention held after Rutherford's death in a talk titled, "Peace, Can It Last?"
It explains why religious influence was back of the Civil War in 1861, and the Vatican made overtures with the head of the Confederacy, reaching a shocking climax in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, who belonged to no religious organization, but stood solidly by the Holy Bible.
This theology of Knorr's really mirrored that of his close associate, Fred Franz. Franz succeeded Knorr as the Society's vice president after Knorr was promoted to president, and later still he would succeed Knorr as the president of the Watchtower Society after Knorr's death in 1977. Well, as Knorr was considering the missionary activity of Jehovah's Witnesses during the middle of World War II, war is raging in Europe, in Asia, and in Africa, and so he envisioned that if nowhere else, Jehovah's Witness missionaries could be sent to Central and South America and islands of the Caribbean. But the main factor there, they would need to learn Spanish. And so as Knorr and his fellow board members discussed how best to accomplish this, an expanded vision of a missionary school emerged. In this school, students would learn not just a foreign language, but a deeper understanding of Jehovah's Witness doctrine.
I was Brother Knorr's secretary, and the governing body was the board of directors in those days. And the board of directors had the meeting, and they talked about the program of education that Brother Knorr had in mind.
Now, where could this new missionary school be housed? The Watchtower magazine answers. A large 3-story brick building had been erected at Kingdom Farm, South Lansing, New York in 1940 for emergency purposes. Why let it stand idle? Why not make alterations in it and convert it into missionary training school quarters? Just so. Yes, a use for Rutherford's empty emergency center had been found. Of course, you might recall that the building had the name Gilead prominently carved on the entranceway. Well, never one to waste good stonework, Knorr promptly named the new school the Watchtower Bible College of Gilead. The name's significance was reimagined. No longer was it secret code for Watchtower Society. Instead, articles focused on the meaning of the Hebrew word. Gilead can be translated as witness heap. The society explained that this name is perfect for a missionary college. It would help the organization pile up a heap of witness to Jehovah's honor. In later years, the Watchtower Society would even ascribe divine intervention to Rutherford's selection of this particular Bible name. A 1983 Awake article stated, "The name which was carved over the building's entranceway turned out to be prophetic." Well, Nathan Knorr was appointed to be the school's president by his associates. Instructors were chosen, if at all possible, from the extremely small pool of witnesses in full-time service who had at least some college education. The original 4 instructors were Albert Schroeder, Maxwell Friend, Eduardo Keller, and Victor Blackwell.
I was one of 3 that received a special invitation to see Brother Knorr at his office. Brother Keller, Brother Maxwell Friend, and myself giving astounding news that the governing body had decided to open up a missionary school.
Albert Schroeder had completed 3 years at the University of Michigan. He was chosen as registrar. Decades later, he would also become a governing body member. Maxwell Friend had attended some college when he lived in Zurich, Switzerland. Eduardo, or Edwin Keller, was fluent in Spanish and would serve as the language instructor. Victor Blackwell was the lone instructor with a college degree. He was working as an attorney for the society when called to this new assignment. However, he and his wife became pregnant early in 1943. That was grounds for termination in the Watchtower Society, and Blackwell was dismissed from his position after the first class graduated. But the rule eventually softened. When Albert Schroeder and his wife became pregnant in 1957, he was allowed to keep his position as registrar. The 4 instructors' first assignment was to create the college's curriculum. This they did, along with the assistance of Fred Franz. Like Schroeder, Franz had completed 3 years of college. Rutherford's building needed remodeling to be suitable for the school, so Kingdom Farms staff made the needed adjustments prior to the first class's arrival on February 1, 1943. The class of 100 students graduated 5 months later and were assigned to 9 different Latin American countries. 2 classes graduated from Gilead every year. President Knorr made regular visits down to the campus each term to give lectures. Sometimes he would play baseball with the students and Kingdom Farm staff. As when the society invited Cornell professors and their wives to the Gilead building dedication, Kingdom Farm continued working hard to create a connection with Cornell University after the Gilead Bible College was created.
It's pronounced Cornell. It's the highest rank in the Ivy League.
As previously mentioned in Part 2, John Booth was assigned to work at Kingdom Farm in 1941 and eventually became the farm superintendent. As a youth, he had worked on his family's dairy farm. In his life story, he writes that, "I applied myself to the study of animal and plant nutrition, utilizing the nearby Cornell University and its library. Through our efforts, we were able to increase farm production."
Cornell is an excellent school. Without its agricultural program, we probably wouldn't have cabbage.
In a 1951 Watchtower article, Albert Schroeder noted that on at least 2 occasions he had been invited to address Cornell students taking sociology and religion courses.
Things are going well, actually. I spoke at Cornell during commencement week. Well, I mean, the seniors invited me as a joke, but it was a huge success.
As the focus at Kingdom Farm shifted from just farming to farming and school, more construction projects were completed. In 1946, a library building named Shiloah was added. It eventually housed nearly 9,000 volumes concerning religion and Bible study. The building also contained additional classroom space. An outdoor amphitheater with seating for 350 was added for summertime classes. The amphitheater was situated at the edge of a pond suitable for fishing and even a bit of swimming. David Abule, Kingdom Farm's very first resident, created much of the landscaping and stonework on the grounds. 3 of the farmhouses were turned into school dormitories. In 1955, an observatory housing a 16-inch reflector telescope was added. The school auditorium was also used as a kingdom hall for 2 local congregations, Ithaca and South Lansing. During those Gilead school years, Kingdom Farm had a permanent staff of 50 Bethelites along with the 100 students.
Many brothers returned home by way of the Watchtower Bible School of Gilead and marveled at the campus that has there been developed. It isn't elaborate, but just shows what can be done when a few brothers want to beautify a place. Members of the farm family and Gilead students have added improvements and have created what many visitors have described as a sample of the peaceful tranquility of the New World.
In the late 1950s, the Watchtower Society noted a growing problem in the organization. Many of its international branch offices were not quite on message when compared to world headquarters. The desired degree of conformity was lacking. The Society's board of directors concluded that the men managing these branches would benefit from an intensive re-education. It was decided that, for a time, Gilead would change from a 5-month missionary school to a 10-month branch management school. The Society wanted the management trainees to be taught by Brooklyn headquarters staff. Hence, the 35th Gilead class, held in 1960, was the last one hosted at Kingdom Farm. Beginning in 1961, Gilead was located at Brooklyn Bethel. 514 students completed the branch management version of Gilead over the next 5 years.
And then Brother Knorr told me, says, in 1964, we're going to have a 10-month course in Gilead for all branch people who had branch experience. Oh, it was very, very good. We studied a lot of, not only the Bible, we studied a lot on the Bible, discourse and everything, but we studied a lot of branch material too.
By 1965, enough personnel had been trained in branch oversight, and Gilead reverted to its 5-month missionary curriculum. But it remained located in Brooklyn. Kingdom Farm would never host the School of Gilead again. However, schooling at Kingdom Farm was not over just yet. On March 9, 1959, the first 25 students had arrived in Lansing for a brand new 4-week school for congregation elders. It was called Kingdom Ministry School, or KM School for short. Once Gilead moved permanently to Brooklyn, 100 elders arrived in Lansing each month for KM School. After Gilead School relocated to Brooklyn, the Society began to think about moving farm operations closer to headquarters as well. In 1963, the Watchtower Society purchased an 811-acre farm in Pine Bush, New York, about 2 hours north of Brooklyn. Bethel home overseer George Couch later recalled the process of purchasing the farm from a witness family. Couch, along with factory overseer Max Larson, was head of all Bethel operations in the United States.
Brother Knorr said around in this early 60s sometime about looking at getting another farm closer to New York so we didn't have to travel so far. So one cold Saturday morning, I called Brother Larson and I said, Brother Larson, you want to take a trip with me? He said, I'll go with you. I didn't tell him where I was going. So we come up here to the Goebel place, and I come up with the intention of asking Brother Goebel where he had advised us to look for buying a farm. And so we got here about 10 o'clock and cold. They had finished the barn work, and we come in the house and had a cup of coffee and had a bite breakfast with them. And of course, they kept looking at us, wondering, what in the world are you doing up here? And so finally we said, we're thinking of getting a farm closer to New York than Kingdom Farm, and thought maybe you'd have some ideas. And it just stunned them. They looked at one another, and then they looked at us, and I thought, no, what in the world did we say wrong? And she said, you know, yesterday we put this farm up for sale, and we were the buyers of it then.
A second nearby farm was subsequently acquired. Property in Pine Bush totaled 1,698 acres in 1974. In 1979, the acreage was reported as 1,031 acres. This is the current branch complex named Watchtower Farms. In 1964, the Society took steps toward the eventual sale of a portion of the Kingdom Farm property, including the buildings previously utilized by the Watchtower Bible School of Gilead. The idea that Kingdom Farm could serve as the geographical nucleus of a post-Armageddon society had faded away. To the Watchtower Board of Directors in 1964, that was merely the odd notion of a previous Watchtower administration. In 1967, Kingdom Ministry School was moved to Brooklyn, and the following year, the Society sold all the Kingdom Farm school buildings, along with some of the farm buildings and land. They were purchased by the state of New York. The state used them to create the Lansing School for Girls, later called the Lansing Girls Residential Center. It was a medium-security correctional facility for girls ages 11 to 17 who had been convicted of various criminal offenses. A similar facility for boys was later built next door, called the Finger Lakes Residential Center. The Girls Residential Center is now closed down. As of 2014, the state was attempting to sell the property. The Watchtower Society kept about 550 acres of Kingdom Farm after 1968. It was used for growing crops and some beef breeding cattle as a support to Watchtower Farms. David Abule, the very first Bethelite at Kingdom Farm, was reassigned to Watchtower Farms, as were many other of the Kingdom farmers. Abule lived there until his death a few years later in 1971. But a skeleton crew of Bethelites continued to staff the Lansing farm well into the 21st century. In 2007, the Society made an effort to sell its remaining Lansing acreage as development property, but plans with the town fell through. In 2014, the organization tried again. The entire farm was put up for sale as a single parcel. The total property was 528 acres, and the asking price was $3 million, or about $5,700 per acre. The typical land price in Lansing is less than $3,000 per acre, so it was unclear if any local farmers could afford the property. Some residents were concerned that real estate developers would buy up all the land. But in March 2015, the property was purchased for $2.8 million. The buyer was a dairy farmer from neighboring Cayuga County. The parcel would continue to be used as farmland. The transaction meant the property returned to Lansing's tax rolls for the first time in 80 years. The last Bethelites in Lansing packed their bags. The time of Kingdom Farm was over.
Even these vegetables will aid in that proclamation.